Okay, I wanted to talk about this a little bit.
This is an update. Tennessee cop involved in Patrice claims it was groomed by the police. Let's put the picture up full mass. Former Tennessee cop Megan Hall, 26 years of age, who was fired over numerous sexual trysts with other officers, claims in a new federal lawsuit that she was sexually groomed by her department superiors. This is a hell of a story. You got to pay attention. Hall was fired in January after affairs with 5 other cops became public. Hall, who blamed a troubled marriage for the affairs, claims she felt trapped and exploited among the all-male ranks of the LA Verne Police Department. Now, let me say this. When this first happened, who was the face of the story? It was her. She was the face of the story. She was, at a time, the only face of the story, even though, according to the articles written initially, her supervisors were the ones having sexual relations with her. Now, I'm not defending the actions of any of these cops. They were adults. But do you not find it ironic that the 5 men who were engaged in this misconduct had no picture of them in any of the reporting initially? It was only her. There's more. According to the 51-page federal lawsuit, where Miss Hall sought role models at her new job, she instead found predators. The lawsuit says, in place of offering professional development, her supervisors and the chief of police groomed her for sexual exploitation. They colluded in using their authority to systematically disarm her resistance and entrap her in degrading and abusive sexual relationships, even sharing tips on the best ways to manipulate and exploit her. The suit claims Hall, who had a history of mental illness, felt trapped, and in an attempt to escape, she nearly killed herself. Now remember, she's the police now, okay? And I'm bringing this up for a few reasons. Number one, she has now said, yeah, I had a history of mental health, okay? A mental health disorder. She's still the police. In addition to that, if they'll treat another cop this way, how do you think?
And they knew about it too. They knew that she had a mental illness.
Think they'll treat you? If they'll treat another person in blue in this manner, how do you think they would treat your children? There's more. In an interview during an internal investigation,
Exactly. To me, it's like, okay, if you're going to get people who are vulnerable that are among the police force, this is the mindset that would most likely try to take advantage of people that they may stop and, might have an illegal bind in some way or another. You might try and get sexual favors to go easy on someone, for example. Like, this is a very dangerous way for police officers to conduct their work, basically. This type of mindset, it's the same mindset they would have towards people that they are stopping on the street. Continue.
Young cop admitted she performed sex acts on duty and on police property and had a threesome with one cop and his wife. Hall has told the investigator she got stupid and got desperate in the midst of a divorce. All right, let's put him up. Hall, who was 24 when she first applied to the force in 2020, claims she first became sexually involved with Sergeant Superior Lewis Powell. This was early last year. The lawsuit says Powell learned Hall was going through marital problems and positioned himself as a reliable source of companionship and advice regarding Hall's career and her marriage. Sergeant Powell persisted in requests for sex despite Ms. Hall's resistance. It said eventually Ms. Hall gave in to Sergeant Powell's request for sexual favors. She said when she tried to break off the affair, Powell threatened to kill himself. Now, do I flat out believe everything that she's saying? No, I don't. I don't know exactly who to believe. I do know this. It's chaotic, but probably normative for this kind of behavior to happen inside of the ranks of police departments throughout this country.
You have to understand what she said previously and what was said previously, that she had a mental illness and that they found ways to manipulate and to exploit her. So, of course, he would say things like that to try and exploit her. Doesn't mean he really meant that he was going to kill himself. But yes, under the context of what they're talking about, it does make sense. Now, I wanted to talk about one thing. I wanted to address another video specifically because I feel like there's two aspects to this going on here that I want to address because I feel like in these situations that people are allowed to run amok because they get basically a situation where they are specifically they're basically given privilege, and people always say that there's such a thing as not a privilege, but let's go further. I just want to do this and then I'm gonna
for a great low rate, make the right call and go to general.
Talk about my own personal opinion.
A action figure.
Sorry about
This
that.
is Juvederm. My name is Joanna. I'm from Colombia. They did my laugh.
All right, y'all, moving on. A few weeks ago, we reported on a story surrounding a Tennessee police officer who was fired for involvement in a sex scandal with other male officers. Y'all remember that? The lady that had a little choo-choo train, the little chocolate choo-choo train right on her. Well, in a new federal lawsuit, the officer, Megan Hall, is claiming, here we go, here we freaking go, claiming that superiors in her department sexually groomed her. It's not her fault she was groomed. The 26-year-old former cop also blamed her troubled marriage for the scandalous affairs and said she felt trapped and exploited, and therefore she had no choice but to allow 7 black cocks up in her. The lawsuit states where Ms. Hall sought role models at her new job. She instead found predators. Hall was fired in January after the affairs with 5 other cops became public. Al, what do you think about this? Is she the victim here?
Listen, I gotta think about this. Listen, I mean, when's the last time you went on a job and found 7 role models that were not your color?
First off, that's what I mean. That's exactly why they were able to get away with exploiting her. Specifically because of color. Why I say that is because in America, we have a history where black Americans try to act like, oh, poor woe is me. At some point in time in history, there used to be black men being blamed for things that they didn't actually do, of which I personally think, considering you have to understand the environment that black people come from. And I don't mean this in a mean way, but it's the truth. Slavery is not a place for children, okay? Slavery is not a place for people to grow up in a healthy environment, to be emotionally stable, emotionally able to socialize with other people properly, basically. You get exposed to a lot of rape, a lot of sexual assault, a lot of verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse. And this happened for males and females generationally throughout time, basically. And then these people were let loose after that point. And you mean to tell me that you don't think that some people were bad apples and that maybe there was a reason for that, okay? But at the same time, like I said, a lot of the time people will say black men were chastised too much or whatever for having inclinations towards white women. And it's like, to me, from my perspective, I think they're probably, if you notice, there's a behavior with black men where they specifically are encouraged to be sexually aggressive. It is just what it is. I was just watching just social interaction of a black man with women as opposed to another race. And the way is one very, it's like almost a social misunderstanding, I think, with some black men. Like they don't have a good grip on what's appropriate, in certain aspects. And honestly, I will say this completely just honest. These people are honestly more inappropriate than other men, basically. Like, many of the time I've seen white men are not as inappropriate as black men. That's just the truth. Is it because of how the system was towards black Americans during slavery? I think it has something to do with that. I think it broke their families up. I think it messed up situations, basically, to raise men who were actually able to understand you are not your sexual urges. You have to control yourself, basically. You have to be a human being, not an animal. And I think maybe this has to do with the whole thing of a double edged sword. One, there's racism for black men, and black men specifically have this situation where they are animalized very often. And sometimes black men give in to it. Maybe they believe it. They actually think that they're more animalistic, and therefore they give way with their urges because they don't think they need to control themselves. And when black people raise black men, black women raise black men to basically see themselves as being coddled, like in this situation where they're basically, their argument is that, oh, um, it's all a white woman trying to make a black man look badly and blah, 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 blah. Coddling black men for their bad behavior, coddling black men because you want to have this certain perspective of thinking that black men are supposed to be these sexual animals who don't control their actual sexual urges. You should not be hitting on people at work like that, okay, to that extreme of what she has documented information specifically showing that specifically these people basically harassed her. The person in charge above her, the chief, was a black man and set that standard in that environment, you know. And I think it has to do with the raising of these black men and then also black women. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people hate this, but black women constantly encourage black men to sexually harass people, other people, themselves. It's like this whole social cue of which, one, many black women like to be sexually harassed, I think, because they don't feel desired, so then they'll take anything. So then black men, when they act inappropriately, they encourage it, which tells black men that that's okay behavior. Then on top of it, it's not just that, but women in general who are harassed by black men who do not appreciate it and do not give back that kind of feedback, basically are basically attacked by black women, and black women will carry black men, protect black men, fight for black men, like masculine individuals, by the way. They do. It's a masculine behavior they got going on there. But anyway, it's just like that's what they do. They just stay basically trying to encourage, try and basically protect that type of behavior. And like I said, it starts at home, it starts in their communities, and it makes it where black men are not able to communicate properly at their job. Even in settings where they're trying to get women, they still don't even sometimes seem to know how to interact with women that well, because black women basically drop the ball on that situation, in my opinion, because they encourage them to act inappropriately like this. I think it's both people, both of these type of people somehow see themselves as animalistic. And you could say this honestly, sometimes black people think that you can't mess with a black person because black person's going to end up acting out, which is why violent behavior becomes more encouraged in that community, because they think that being black means that you should be given more leverage to basically be scared of you because you're going to act aggressively and you're going to act animalistically because you animalize yourself and your feelings and your behavior. So you accept animalistic behavior in yourself and you think that that's okay just because you're black. And because of that, then black men basically are further encouraged to have this type of behavior where they make a bad work environment. And this is not just the only situation. Black men often are allowed to let loose, especially, yeah, just black men in general, it seems like. Black men are generally just, encouraged to let loose, you know, and you guys will try and say, oh, it's a situation of, a white woman trying to go after a black man or something. That's your way of protecting black men. You keep trying to give black men different privileges to sexually assault, sexually harass, and sexually exploit women, black women, Hispanic women, white women, just women in general, by your behavior. Because you value black men, one, and I think you like to coddle black men, of course. But it's not just that. It's just the fact that you just think that black people should be allowed to have animalistic behavior just because you think you're an animal simply because you're black, because you have a low self esteem on being black, because otherwise you would hold black men at a higher standard. Otherwise, you would hold black people at a higher standard and say that black people need to control themselves. They need to control their urges, you know? But no, you don't think that because you make excuses for black people because you think black people should be held at different standards when it comes to the law, you know? And I'm not just talking about this specific situation, I'm talking about in general. It does seem like that. When it comes to violence, when it comes to sexual assault, when it comes to rape, when it comes to abuse, anything where it has to do with controlling your urges, you guys always say that black people should be held at a different standard than other races simply because you think they're basically animalistic. And if they are really animalistic, then I guess they don't really deserve to be in the same society. See, you're writing yourself out of society when you are an able human being who is completely just as human as anyone else. And you need to learn how to control yourself. And you need to put black men at the same standard of controlling themselves as well. So that's all I have to say in this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment down below, and have a great day. Bye, guys.